Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, friends. Welcome to Empower. I'm so glad we have not just the speakers, but the audience from different time zones dialing in. And that's why I said, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. But once again, welcome to Empower, a series of unheard leadership mantras packed in a webinar for you. So friends, we already have two thought leaders, two bright faces. As you can see, they are smiling already. So to my right, the gentleman with the long hair is Sunil A.Bijlani. You can see his name. Sunil, can you wave at people?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
That's Sunil for you. And to his left, we have Srini. Srini, if you can wave. Great. So, in fact, to introduce this wonderful topic today, I want to give you some kind of, a background. Today, companies are investing millions of dollars in customer experience because it leads to increase in loyalty, increase in market share, increase in revenue, so on and so forth. But there are companies which are using employee experience as a secret weapon. And so is there a connection between customer experience and an employee experience? Well, I only ask questions, I don't give answers, because there are two leaders who could answer these questions. So let's get going. For those who don't know me, my name is Meg Risaldar. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Enable, which is part of a 11-year-old global HR advisory firm called The Strategist. I have my partner in crime, Mr. Atul Sharma. Atul, if you can put on your video and wave at the audience. So that's Atul for you. So Atul and me are going to navigate through this journey for all of you. While participants have been put on mute, but that doesn't mean you're not going to participate. As you know, as part of the registration, most of you have already sent questions. And in fact, Sunil was shocked when I told him the number of questions that we have received at the time of registration. So thanks a lot for sending us lots of questions to us. And today is another opportunity for those who could not ask questions during registration. You can shoot your questions to Atul, who's going to sort of filter questions and feed them into me and keep this Rubaru session going on. So, ladies and gentlemen, without a further ado, please join me in welcoming a HR veteran, a thought leader, who's had a very interesting first inning with the ITC and GE, the best brands in the country and the world. And today he's enjoying his second innings. As you can see, he's bright and shining. He's right now settled in Philadelphia, and it's very early morning for him. So Sunil, that's Sunil A.Bijlani for you. So Sunil, if you can wave once again, that's Sunil for you. Known in the HR circle for his humility, terrific sense of humor, and the magic of connecting with people. So we're going to hear a lot of his stories. And then Sunil, once again, welcome to Empower. And it's a pleasure to have you. So that's Sunil for you. Then, ladies and gentlemen, Srini is, of course, reappearing on our request on Empower platform. Srini needs no introduction, but let me tell you, a passionate teacher, a compassionate researcher, who's known in the HR circle famously as monk with a MacBook. The gentleman who's known to simplify theories so that everybody can understand. So Srini, once again, welcome to Empower, and we are really looking forward for a Rubaru session. So let's get going. My first question, Sunil, and on popular demand, goes to you because not just because of your gray hair and your length and the depth of experience, but honestly, you're one of those who have seen ITC, General Electric, and within GE, you have seen the entire, most of the GE companies also. You've worked with maybe 3 generations. Tell us, today's generation talks about Raat Gayi, Baat Gayi. They believe in moving on with life. But our topic says employees have elephant's memory. So if you could throw some light on this about is it a generation phenomenon or it can be generalized?
Sure, Meg. So first of all, good afternoon and good evening and hello to everybody and thank you for being here. I'd like to say that, Meg, to your point, employees may forget, what you say to them or what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel actually. And let me illustrate this with an actual anecdote which happened. So in a company which had done extremely well, they wanted to reward the employees and celebrate the occasion. So they had organized an ice cream social, and all the employees could go down. They'd put up a special tent, and they had one of the vendors, local vendors, ice cream vendors there, serving different flavors of ice cream. Now, this was a huge call center, and one of the very senior associates, she actually went down to have ice cream and celebrate, the occasion. But when she went down, like any other employees, she forgot to carry. The company had given coupons that you had to give the coupon, and in exchange, you would get an ice cream. So
Right.
they would know how many people had had ice cream, kind of. So she had forgotten her coupon at her desk or at home. When she went down, they asked her for the coupon, and she said, "I don't have the coupon with me." So they were very rude and they said, "Then I'm sorry, we won't give you the ice cream," and they shooed her away. And she felt really humiliated in front of all other colleagues. And she was a very senior associate in the company and well respected. So she came back to her cubicle. And what she did is she got onto the instant messaging software of the company and pinged the HR leader and said that I'm such a senior employee, but I've never felt so humiliated as I felt today for a measly ice cream. I don't need that ice cream, and was very upset. So the moment this popped up on the HR leader's screen, he dropped whatever he was doing and rushed to her cubicle and said, "I'm sorry for this incident, but I want to talk to you." So she said, "I'm on a customer call now, I can't talk to you." So he asked her, "When is your break?" So she said, "The break is in another 15 minutes. So he said, "I'll wait for you at the reception. Come and see me at the reception." So he was waiting at the reception. She dutifully, after 15 minutes, came and he said, "You come with me back to the tent, please." And he accompanied her to the tent. And the moment he went down, obviously they didn't ask, her for any more coupons because she had come with the HR leader, and she was given a choice of whichever ice cream and as many helpings as she wanted, etc. Not only that, there were other leaders there, and then she was asked to stand, and then there were photographs taken with the leadership team, etc. And she was really made to feel like a VIP. And then he accompanied her back to her desk and said that, on behalf of the company, I'd like to apologize for the way you have been treated. You should never have been treated like this. And so she then actually broke down and started crying and said that in her entire career, she said she had never been made to feel the way she's made to feel. And she said that you dropped everything, she told the HR leader, and you came with me, which is really something I'll never forget in my entire life. This has been one of the most wonderful days in my life. So that's why it's how you actually make employees feel that they'll never forget. They might forget what you said to them, but these kind of experiences stay with the employees for life. And if they really feel valued, the other thing I wanted to say was, if you really feel valued as an employee, then you'll find that people will not want to leave the organization. It's only when you don't feel yourself valued in an organization that you will think of, moving on. And let me give you an example. Uh, my first 18 years I spent with a company called ITC, and most of you are familiar with ITC. It's is one of the best companies, and I got in straight from campus into ITC, and whatever I learned in employee relations has been in ITC actually. And in those days also, if you looked at the turnover in ITC, it was almost nil. People never left. They used to stay there through retirement.
Right.
And that was all because of the way you were given responsibilities, and you were made to feel valued, and you were given large responsibilities at a very early stage in your career.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Sunil. If I stick to the first part where you
Sure.
beautifully articulated about how this so-called bad experience
Yeah.
was converted into a good experience, I want to take Srini's perspective on this. So Srini, you are a man with principles and frameworks that you always apply. Tell us, in a situation like this, is there an equation like for every two bad experiences, you will need two good experiences to balance it out? Is there an equation or a thumb rule?
Okay, I don't think so. There is a arithmetic equation for that. But to take forward what Sunil said, it is critical for us to understand and appreciate that employees are evaluating organizations every day on the experience parameters, if I may say. And experience is the critical thing, because what is happening is your competition will always replicate your compensation. But what your competition will never replicate is your culture. And culture is becoming the backbone, and culture is nothing but an accumulation of multiple experiences. So when we go back and say employees have elephant memory, it is because many times employees are, if they have the initial few good memories, then they go back and keep giving you benefit of doubt every time. So even if you go back and say there's a 25% cut in the salary for these 3 months, they'll go back and say, okay, we know it's happening good. But if the initial few experiences are not so good, then the employees will always go back and not give you the benefit of doubt. And that is why it is becoming. So there is no one-to-one equation, but what HR needs to strive is to ensure how do you make experiences much more pleasurable than what they are. Today,
Actually, interesting. Yeah. Please go ahead.
So today the big challenge for us is that somewhere along the line, engagement has become more of a checklist event rather than an experience zone. So today we don't do experience zones anymore. It is more of an event checklist where we are trying to do 2+2, and we believe that will translate into that, but it often doesn't.
But Srini, interestingly, in the midst of this, the good experiences, the bad experience, for lack of better words, is a psychological contract then an overrated phenomena?
Oh, absolutely no, absolutely no. In fact, physical contract is a overrated phenomena. People believe that if I've taken an appointment letter or if I've signed that increment letter, I have signed my life for you. It doesn't happen that way. Physical contracts are actually overrated. Psychological contracts in Indian and Indian conditions, we still don't take it very seriously. But if you see most of us, the way we operate in our personal lives, you are ready to run and give blood donation to a friend of yours. There is no physical contract when you were growing up saying just because you gave me a chocolate when I was in first grade, I'll give you blood after 25 years. We just run and give. So psychological contracts are extremely important. What we don't understand is psychological contracts expire at much faster rate than physical contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So today when I called you and if you don't pick my phone, then suddenly there is a devaluation in the psychological contracts. So when people go back and check with the organizations and say, I need this help or I need this expectation, and if organizations fail to understand that, then you realize that the whole psychological contract starts jittering. So if you ask me, psychological contracts are far more important than physical contracts. And the worst part is psychological contracts expire at a faster rate than the physical contracts.
Awesome. Thanks, Srini. So Sunil, there is a follow-up question coming from the audience.
But I want to just add on, I just want to add on to what Srini said. I couldn't agree with you more, Srini. I just want to say that on that, there is a concept which many of you would have read, this book of Stephen Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he talks about a concept there which is called the emotional bank balance. And I have always used this throughout my career. And basically what it is that, it's when you treat employees with respect and dignity and you keep your word. So when you say you will do something and you keep your promise, as they say, you actually make a positive deposit in the bank balance, emotional bank balance of an employee. And when you say no to an employee, when they come for something and you say, no, I can't do this, you are actually making a withdrawal. So at the end of the day, do you have more deposits or you have more withdrawals? Is your bank balance negative emotionally in a employee's bank balance account, emotional bank balance, or is it a positive account, So my endeavor was always to try and build relationships and keep the bank balance positive. And if you keep that, I think that helps, psychologically with the employees.
So Sunil, you just revealed the secret of your magic of
No,
connecting people. Absolutely. So
no
Sunil,
magic.
thanks for simplifying that for us. So there's a follow-up question for you.
Sure.
Srini beautifully articulated about uh, the psychological contract. Audience wants to know from you because you have seen the blue collar, the white collar. Uh, is psychological contract then a more phenomena applicable for blue collar or a white collar? Your perspective is.
No, I think, the way we had been brought up is that there is no difference between the way you treat an employee, whether the employee is a blue collar or a white collar. These differentiations have been made by management actually, that this one is a blue collar and it's a white collar, but employee is an employee. They have the same emotions, feelings, etc. It doesn't matter where they are in the company hierarchy. Everybody wants to be treated fairly, consistently, with respect and with dignity. So to me, I've never treated employees depending on whether they are a white collar or a blue collar. The only thing that you might find a difference in most companies is the way they tailor their communication depending on which class of employees they're dealing with. But in terms of day-to-day interactions, no differentiation I would make between a blue collar or a white collar. To me, an employee is an employee.
Awesome. So thanks, Sunil, for and that's backed by 30 plus years of experience. So really thanks for clarifying that particular myth. So coming over to Srini. Srini, you are a framework man. You're known for your frameworks and scientific principles, and you also talked about the psychological contracts. So in a ER framework, how does psychological contract plays a role? If you can elaborate, that would really be great for the audience.
So, no, to put it in very simple words is, what is like Sunil rightly said, when we look at the emotional bank balance, how many times are there positive experiences from the organizations? So today what is happening is, unfortunately, and this is more of a philosophical debate, since many of us are from the fraternity here, I can openly say that. Unfortunately, today we go back and see human beings as a human, our function itself is called human resources. So we are seeing the employees as resources. Now, resources have a very different connotation in the Western philosophy, the way management works. Like, for example, this pen is a resource. Now, after the resource is used, will I go back and be in love with the pen? No. I will go and deposit this pen or throw away this pen and say it is no use for me. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the Indian construct, when you move away saying human being is not a resource but is a capital, then it's like your family jewels or family heirloom. You, after Diwali, you don't throw away those jewels. You go back and safely deposit again in the bank locker, you again polish it and all that. Today, unfortunately, HR is seeing people, or organization is seeing people as resources and not as the capital construct. So what is happening is, many times we land up using a checklist. So for example, today I am coming and joining you as the organization. And if you are my dream company, say a G or ITC, it's been for years I've been longing to come in there and work for you. And if the first few experiences, starting from the guard at the security to the guys who are in the facilities to the HR, if they make me feel just like another resource, saying there are 8,000 people, what's the big deal? You've come one more guy, why don't you sit? Why don't you do this, that? The whole emotional construct starts collapsing. Because there is a hype, there is an expectation, and with that, when I walk in. But there are some organizations which are ensuring that doesn't happen. You go back and treat each of these. So the question for us as HR is that when is the day going to be the day when we start treating our employees as clients? Unfortunately, today we don't treat them as clients. We treat them pain in all the wrong places. And that is not the way the function was evolved, or the function should have evolved. But the day you start treating your employees as clients, you will start realizing we start building those contracts which are much more than physical contracts. Today, the whole premise for us is, if I've got a physical contract in place, my job is done. And typically, we go back and pass the baton. So recruitment team says, now it's my job done, HRBP will take care. Psychological contract is there, baby. My job is only physical contract. But for an employee, HR is HR. He doesn't understand the difference between acquisition, onboarding, HRBP, and others. So that is the gap, and that gap we need to start filling up. So psychological contracts is the way forward, especially larger the organization, the greater the identity challenge. Because I'm no more than just an email ID. In smaller organization, at least there are 100 people who know me. When you join organizations which are 50,000, 60,000, you are just another email ID. And that's why that contracts become far more important.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Srini. And you actually elaborated on framework a lot, and I'm changing the gear now and getting into the action. I'm coming over to Sunil now. So Sunil, you're a man of action. I mean, you've seen unions, you've seen the IR, the ER, and then the HR, the entire gamut of it. Tell us one of the most powerful incidences for the young aspirants who wants to get a flavor of ER in your early days, some life lesson. It would be great
Sure.
to hear from you.
Sure. So, I was brand new, and this is in the year 1982. I had joined ITC, and I was asked to come and see the personal manager. Those days, HR was called personnel management. So the personal manager's office I was called. He was an elderly gentleman. I sat down before him, and he asked me that just he and I were sitting, and he asked me my background, etc. And then he said that, what will you do if suddenly, this room is stormed by 60 to 70 people and they come in shouting, what will you do? Now, to be honest, in the institute, we had learned about gheraos, strikes, lockouts,
Yeah.
etc. But we had never been taught on how to deal with a situation like this, to be very honest, And as if on cue, the door opened and 60, 70 people came into his office shouting on top of their voice. And that was a very, new experience for me. I'd never experienced something like this. But I saw how he handled it. He actually let them vent for the first few minutes. He let them shout. Then he raised his hand and said to keep quiet, kind of. And they all kept quiet. Then he said, how many people are you all? So they said, we are 60 or 70 of us. And he said, how many are here? They said, there are just 2 of you. He said, and I have how many years? They said, 2 years. So he said, if 60 people shout, how can I hear with 2 years what you all are saying? Then he pointed at one guy and said, Umesh, tum batao kya problem hai? So he appointed a leader amongst that group. And so apparently later I found out that he had an equation with that guy. And so Umesh said, sir, these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 issues. So he took out a pad and noted it and said, you know what? He repeated it and said, these are the issues. They said, yes, sir. He said, okay, I will speak to the production manager. I need 2 days time. Come back after 2 days and I will tell you what the production manager has said. Okay. And when they were leaving, he said, all of you don't need to come back. Umesh, you come back and I'll tell you what he said. So this was a live experience for me in how to handle gherao situations, which came in very handy in my next posting, because there every single day between 11 and 11:30, which used to be the lunch break for the early shift, invariably there used to be a gherao. It was a very militant union and we used to have gheraos every morning 11 to 11:30. And so this technique came in very handy for me in managing large crowds which were shouting and very vociferous kind of. So that was a hands-on experience. The other thing that person told me is that whenever there is a problem, most people run away from problems. I want you to jump into the problem. And in the process, you will get to know people, you will get to know the issues. So that was one piece of advice that I've always held on to. And sorry, I'll keep rambling because there's so much that I want to share, And let me tell you, I moved to a factory and I was sitting in my office when one employee came in and he had a huge swelling on his throat and he had a gamcha tied around his neck, and he asked me for a medical advance. And I said, what is the issue? So he said, I have throat cancer and I need money for my treatment. So the company had a policy of giving advances and you had to settle the advances. So I called for his medical register and checked, and I told him the company has already advanced 7,000 rupees to you. And 7,000 was a huge sum of money in the early 80s. So I told him, you first give the receipts for what you've spent it on before I can think of another advance for you. And then I went on to the finance department because I had my induction going on those days. I was new to the factory and I was sitting there. And a couple of hours had passed when this guy sauntered in to that office. And I could see he was getting agitated. He asked me where my boss was, and there had been an accident, and my manager had gone to the hospital along with that employee who had been injured in the accident. So I said, he's not here, he's gone to the hospital. So he said, you don't know me, but your manager trained under me when he came as a trainee. You know? So I said, okay. But I could see he was getting more and more agitated. And he said, you know, I can't wait longer. He took out his watch and he threw it on the table. And he said, I'm going to resign now. Give me my money now. I want my money now. Settle now. Then he lifted his fist and he thumped the table right in front of me. And again, he raised his fist. So I thought this time the fist is going to land on me. So I stood up and said, hey, take it easy, take it easy. Moment I did that, he picked up the chair I was sitting on and he hit the chair on me. So I had never been in a situation, you're never trained for all this, you know, that this kind of industrial relations kind of. So I held the, legs of the chair, pushed it aside. And the finance manager, by the way, was almost under the table whimpering, you know, was this thing. And I ran out of his office for my life, basically. And I called the factory manager and said, sir, I've just been assaulted by an employee in the finance department. He said, you wait there, I'm sending somebody. So when we went back into the finance department, this guy was lying there, passed out on the floor, the employee. So we got a stretcher, put him in the ambulance and sent him out of the factory. Then a meeting was convened in the factory manager's office. And they were deciding to terminate this employee because he had assaulted a manager. You know, and everybody was in unison saying, yes, this is what is the right thing to do. So I said and the union was called in that this is happening. So I told the factory manager that I think, sir, let's look at it from the employee's point of view, that he's been waiting since the morning and he's got frustrated in terms of our bureaucratic system. You know, first give this, then we'll do this, and he's a cancer patient and this is not the way we should be treating. So look at it from his point of view. So he lost his nerve because of the way we treated him actually. And my recommendation would be that he not be allowed back into the factory till he is certified fit by a doctor. And secondly, any dealings about this guy should be dealt directly by the general secretary of the union.
Wow.
To the union, the moment they heard that, they realized that this guy's job is saved actually, you know, thanks to this idea. And the general secretary immediately said, we agree to what Mr. Bijlani is saying, you know. And overnight, I became, I won my credibility with the union.
Awesome,
Earlier.
awesome. Sunil, definitely they don't teach this kind of a stuff in the business school. And I think, you know, awesome experiences and you learn it the hard way. What I want to know from Srini now is the HR has evolved, and I'm sure there's a lot of younger audience sitting today who must be smiling when Sunil is telling about his experience of somebody thumping the table or lifting the chair. You know, tell us, Srini, about, you know, in an evolved state of HR. Today we are talking about knowledge economy and stuff. How these lessons are applicable to the younger generation in HR right now?
Oh, I think when we see today's force, you will see them. They have far more, if I may say, you know, higher cognitive skills than what Sunil explained. So I also started my career in IR, and it was in Videocon, and we've seen all those, you know, Baba Azam coming in jeeps with swords and all that. So the amount of blood I've seen in office spaces was there, and then so that thing we've seen. Today's forces with cognitive skills being higher, they act and react in different fashion. So instead of thumping the table, I will go to Glassdoor and write a critique there. Right. So writing a critique on Glassdoor is as good as thumping the table. The challenge for today's HR professionals is you don't know who's written actually. When thumping table, at least Sunil knew who was the guy who was upset and why. Yeah. But today, in this degree of anonymity and social media, that life is becoming far more difficult. So next day morning, if you're sitting in the reception and you're looking at your 500 people workforce, you're not sure who was that gentleman or lady who actually went and thumped the table on Glassdoor yesterday by writing all the inside information, what was not supposed to go. So people do react even today. It's not that people don't react. People's reactions have changed. That is what we are witnessing. What is critical for us as HR is to understand quickly is, like Sunil said, people don't change. Their reactions, their emotions are still the same. The stress that is today at workplaces is much higher than previously. So the fuse is also blowing off much quickly. Previously, if you see when we were there at managing these blue collar work, it wouldn't happen overnight. The bubble, the pressure in the cooker would come and we would get it. But today, if you go back and see, the whole thing blows off. And why the blows off? Because the fuses are getting short circuited. So yes, people do react. People have ways and mechanisms of reacting, and they're doing it. What we need to be very aware is the reactions is coming in much different fashion now. So physically, everybody is nice to each other. So when I show my face to my HR manager or manager, I say, no, I'm extremely happy. But parallelly, I may be typing a very bad note on the Facebook or Glassdoor or some other things. And unfortunately, the social media has given the anonymity power to everybody. So everybody feels empowered today to go back and put anything and get away with it. They did not put names. They did not put any references. The classic challenge that you find most of us in HR are going is raising complaints to the ethics committee or some other ombudsperson in the organization. All it takes is to write one nasty note about a manager or somebody, and then the whole inquiry starts. So there are ways and means of escalating today, and those are changed, but people do escalate, like what Sunil said.
Srini, there's a follow-up question Atul has pushed me. I mean, he forgot to mention about the name of the person, but it's a very interesting question. Because you talked about the Glassdoor and the social media, the question audience wants to ask you is, given the choice of social media driven employer branding versus using employees as brand ambassadors, what do you think is a more powerful medium today?
If I may
yes,
jump
please.
in on this.
Yeah, Sunil, please.
Because there is a personal experience on this. When I used to work for a business called the G Capital Retail Finance Business, which later on the company divested and it became known as Synchrony Financial. And in India, it's called Synchrony International Services Private Limited.
Right.
So everybody knew about General Electric G as a company, but nobody knew about Synchrony as a company. And y'all are in Hyderabad, so this experiment that we did. We decided to use our own employees as brand ambassadors, and we actually stole a sheaf from ADP. If you remember, ADP used to have these big hoardings in the city with the employees' photograph and names written, and we decided we could do the same. So we actually got employees, and we got an outside agency because we didn't want to be then accused of favoritism that, you chose Srini and Meg because they are your good friends, so they are on the posters everywhere. We didn't do that. We got an ad agency to come in and then take photographs of employees and say these people are photogenic, etc., and shortlisted 6 or 8 of them, and we had a theme running. And so we ran several of these, and so employees got a chance. And then what we used to do is early morning at 6 o'clock, we used to go with the video shoot to the place where the hoarding has been put up and get the employee to stand in the same clothes that they were in that ad and take their photograph. And when somebody from the US came, like our CEO would come, etc., there would be a function where we would thank these brand ambassadors.
Wow.
And the fact is that in all those years that we were there, we lost actually only one employee, one woman employee we lost, who pursued a different career. She became a model because she was noticed on one of those posters and she became a model. So she resigned and joined some modeling agency. But otherwise, the employees had so much pride in the fact that they were on these posters, and by word of mouth, it spread that this is a very employee centric and there's a lot of employee engagement. The whole focus was around employee engagement. And 2-3 years back, the company first time took part in the Great Places to Work and got ranked 23rd. And in fact, last month, they've been ranked 27th this year. So kudos to them. There's a lot of focus on employee engagement there. Great culture.
Thanks, Sunil. I have personally seen when Synchrony painted the whole city with Synchrony wording. So glad that you pulled out from your experience there. So Srini, your perspective, social media or employee as brand ambassador, which is more powerful?
No, employees as brand ambassador any day takes the cake away, because I'll give you a personal experience. Few years back, there was a very nasty campaign run by few people who were part of the ENY Bangalore. And I still remember ENY writing back to its alumni saying, if you believe ENY was not good enough, then it's okay. But if you believe ENY was good enough, then you should go back and say something about it. And you will not believe, we all are EY alumni, and we all just went and bombarded the Facebook saying, just because you had one bad experience, you can't go back and say the whole EY culture is bad. So employees are any day great brand ambassadors. So social media is an irritant, if I may say. So if you are running a marathon and if you have a small pebble in your shoe, it will not stop you running from the marathon, but it will keep irritating you. So social media is like that. But staying fit is, for running the marathon, is your employees as brand ambassadors. So that's the distinction we need to understand. Today, unfortunately, what is happening is, since we treat humans as just resources, till the time I have an equation with you, I pamper you. The day you decide to resign and walk away, then suddenly the whole outlook of organization HR changes.
Right.
And we don't realize that exits are comma, they are not full stop. So in a comma, you don't pause, you only pause, you don't stop. So when people exit, they still are brand ambassadors. They go, they talk about you, they can talk good about you, they can talk bad about you. So the idea is to cultivate that. Again, in India, if you see, very few organizations really invest on alumni. They hardly take care of alumni. They don't even believe that employee relationships extends post-exit. It actually is more critical post-exit, because this person who is quitting and going is going to share far more information about the organization than the existing guys. So ER, if you see, starts much before a person's interview, and ER ends much after the exit. And alumni is something which we need to take care of, which we hardly do these days.
Wonderful. Thanks, Srini, for really, you stretched the employee life cycle before joining and ended it beyond the exit. And really, thanks for relating this concept here. Atul has a follow-up question for Sunil.
Okay.
So Sunil, the audience is carefully listening to your examples.
Yeah, sure.
So the follow-up question on the ice cream case, where you told about the ice cream being offered to the employee. So first part of the question is, would HR respond the same way irrespective of the level of the person? That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is the bond between company and the employee so fragile, the expectation is so fragile that with one bad experience, it can break down the trust. This is for you, Sunil.
Yeah. So I think, any good HR person would react the way that HR leader had reacted. Because if an employee is important and they feel that they have been humiliated, I think, and because of the company, I think some manager in the company treated them that way, then it doesn't matter. You shouldn't let ego come into the way, that I will only relate with employees of a certain level. So that is one. Secondly, the second part of the question, if you can just repeat that.
So the second part of the question is even more interesting. This person is saying that, human expectations Are they so fragile that one bad experience with the ice cream can actually break down the trust or the bond?
Yes, yes, because I'll tell you, each employee, it's very personal for them. Each experience is very personal, you know. So you can't say that this is not an important thing. Why do they feel like this? But for them, it's a very important issue. So you need to try and get into their shoes and empathize and see why they are feeling the way they are feeling. And if you can touch that, and react at their level, what they are feeling, I think that makes a huge difference.
I'll tell a story. Since Sunil is telling stories, I'll also jump in and tell a story.
Yes,
So
Srinivas.
I'll share. I'll go back and tell why is it so. So assume that we all are traveling from say Hyderabad to Bangalore in a Shatabdi, and since we are traveling in Shatabdi, we are going back and saying the food is served, so we don't have to buy food, so nobody buys food. As soon as we get into the train driver announces the pantry car has got whatever spoiled, burnt out, so no food will be served. And then suddenly all of us are extremely angry, going back and saying, "Okay, how come there is no food? How can we, survive 12 hours and all that?" The guy who's running the train, being empathetic guy, says, "Okay, 100 kilometers down the line, say whatever Warangal station, I will stop for 5 minutes, get whatever food you want to get. After that, I will just take it to Bangalore. I'm not going to stop anywhere." We all are agreed. We all sit quietly for next 1 hour, saying, "Now the station will come. We'll jump and get the food." At this station, there is only one food available, which is say biryani. So the guy is told in advance, "Okay, there are 500 hungry people coming, so you cook biryani and keep." 500 people jump out of the train, they get biryani. You and I also go out and get the biryani. We pay that $50, get the biryani packet, come in. As soon as you open the biryani packet, you realize there is hair in it. So there is suddenly you open and you feel there is two hair in it. You say, "EU, who's going to eat this?" So you again jump out of the train. There's another 2 minutes left. You go and shout at the guy saying, "How can there be hair in the biryani?" He says, "I'm so sorry, sir. Here's another packet. Please stay." You take another packet to come into the train, and then you open it. This time it is fine. You eat the biryani and no, it depends on you whether you still see the hair and you don't want to eat or you want to eat. At the end of the day, the biryani guy owner goes back. Obviously, we all have bosses. So he also has a boss. His boss asks, "How was the day?" He says, "Brilliant. It was better than Six Sigma." Why? Because 500 packets I sold, only one packet went bad, and 499 was awesome. So I had a great day. So give me a A-star rating in the appraisal. But for you, how was the journey from Hyderabad to Bangalore? It was not good. Why? Because every time you think about Hyderabad to Bangalore, now you think about biryani. Every time you think about biryani, you see that hair. So like what Sunil said, ice cream may be a trivial issue for everybody, but for that lady, that may be the most critical one. Why? Because her life may have revolved around the ice cream. And today what is happening is, in the millennials, if you see, the joint families are no more there. They're all nuclear families. So there is only one kid and there are two parents who are working the whole day. Both of them, when they come back home, they already have their working parents' guilt. They feel they are not spending enough time with their children. So they are going extra way to pamper them. And in the whole process, what is happening is this new generation of employees who are walking in, they are far more fragile than what many of us were. So for them, the expectations definition is different. For them, fragile, they've become very fragile. They've been the center of attraction in their homes all the time because being a single kid, all the attention was showered on you. So when they come into the organizations, they have the same expectations from the organizations. And when organizations don't give that, they suddenly feel lost. And then these issues like this come, even a small issue which could be for you and me could be a very big important thing for them. So remember that biryani story, it could be 499:1, but for that one, that's the whole world in it.
Awesome. Srini, also I've heard you telling this story about why we are talking about employee having elephant's memory. Would you mind sharing that story with our audience? Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, what the one of the myths that goes, or not myths, but mythology that goes around is, when elephants are small, they're basically tied with chain to a tree. And when the elephant tries to run, the tree holds them back. and it gets registered in their hard disk saying कि I cannot run because my I'm tied to this tree. As the elephant goes bigger and bigger, and the Mawat realizes that now if elephant really pulls, the tree will get uprooted. What does he do? He smartly cuts the chain. But he cuts the chain in a way that the chain is still tied to the leg. Now for the elephant, every time it hears the chain, there is an impression in its head that goes saying, I cannot run because this chain is tied to me. And that's how it gets domesticated. So the idea is what the elephants, whatever it gets registered in their hard disk, it stays with them for a long, long time to come. And that's what we keep going back and seeing with employees also. You will get surprised when employees who are legacy employees, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, they pass in the organization. You will get surprised, they'll come back and say, you remember in the first year when I came and asked you this, you didn't give me. And as HR, we have forgotten, it's long back gone, we don't even realize when was this and what was this. So it is important for us to understand that we keep moving on because we see multiple employees every day. It's same like the biryani store guy. He doesn't remember that one person whose packet was fault because he was busy serving 500 of them. But the employee behaves like that, saying, my packet had the hair, so I don't think you're worth it. And that is the dilemma that we are in. Where do we draw the lines of being customizing to every person and where do we make it generic?
Awesome. So, Srini, Atul is keeping me busy and then I'm now going to enter into a rapid fire. So, Sunil, get ready. It's going to be one to you and one to Srini. But before that, Sumant has asked a very interesting follow-up question to Srini. Srini, Sumant is asking, you talked so much about the psychological contract. The audience would like to hear from you in today's situation where work from home is becoming the new normal. Is there an easy way of continuing the same philosophy of building the psychological contract?
Oh yes, it is far more important today than any time. Managing virtual workforces has been the toughest thing for any place, and that will continue to do so. So there was this whole uproar few months back where they said very big CEOs came back and said 70% of our workforce will become virtual and we don't need physical offices and we are going to let go. And in 4 weeks time, they have again come back and said, no, productivity is not more than 42%. And we can't run the show so please come back to physical offices. So in virtual offices, psychological contract is far more tougher to build. And it's a very big thing. So today, if you look at some of the BFSI segment, insurance agents or bank employees, or even medical representatives, they also, if you see, building psychological contract is far more tougher there.
Right.
Vis-a-vis people who are coming physically to offices. So in virtual workforces, psychological contract is tougher to build, and the more you are able to build, the better it is. Whenever you find physically, there is a chance of assimilating, it is far easier to do. And that's why many organizations go back and say at least every 15 days once you come back to office and show your face. The idea is nothing but to keep, what if I may say, renewing the psychological contract. Because the moment you come to say office, see the building, see the friends, see the socialization around, it becomes that much easy.
Awesome. Thanks, Srini. And I'm sure Sumant is smiling who asked this question. So great. Atul is already through the chat box throwing fire at me with the rapid fire. He's got some nice questions accumulated. So one statement replies, and we'll start with Sunil on the rapid fire round. So Sunil, this one is for you. Do psychological contracts have an expiry date?
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm. Srini, for you, there's a belief Gen Y, today's generation, has short attention span. Is it true?
Yes, to some extent. If it is an area of interest, then they go deep. Otherwise, they'll be at surface level all the time because for them, internet and Wikipedia has opened a all new world for them. So they want to have their finger in all the pies.
A follow-up one, sorry, so Atul is really troubling me. So this is rapid fire A and rapid fire part B. Do the Gen Y has limited knowledge also?
Yes, they do have limited knowledge, again, because they have knowledge of every topic with them. So if in our generation we picked up 10 topics and build depth, today they have knowledge on 100 topics, but do they have depth? If they are interested, then only they'll go. Otherwise, they are at surface level.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Sunil, over to you. Gen X is easy to engage than the Gen Y.
I don't agree. Like I've always said, I don't differentiate between generations and employees. I have personally never felt that it's difficult to engage one versus the other.
Thank you.
And me being a boomer, I'm a baby.
Well, with your long hair, you nowhere give an impression of a baby boomer. Okay, so Srini, over to you. Gen Y. I mean, and the reason I think audience knows that Srini has done a lot of work on the Gen Y and the millennials, and maybe that's why there are a lot of questions coming for the Gen Y towards Srini. So Srini, Gen Y, today's generation is disloyal. Is that true?
No. They're absolutely loyal. The only challenge is they're loyal to their dreams, and unfortunately, working in our organizations is not their dreams. So, for example, I'll give you a small example. I know it's going more than one line, but I always wanted to do bungee jumping. And to do bungee jumping, I need a few lakhs of rupees, and I don't know where to get it because my parents don't allow. And Sunil gives me a job in Synchrony. I say, okay, I will join Synchrony. Why? Because that money will help me to do bungee jumping. Moment I accumulate that 2 lakh rupees, I want to go and do that bungee jumping. At that time, I'll go to Sunil and say, give me leave because I want to go and do bungee jumping. If suppose Sunil doesn't give me the leave, I quit Synchrony and decide to do bungee jumping. So it's quite possible that HR may think I'm disloyal. Why? Because he didn't even stay for 2 years and he went. But as Gen Y, I'll go back and say, no, I'm loyal to my dream. And my dream was never to retire in Synchrony, but my dream was to do bungee jumping. So I'm doing bungee jumping. And that is where the whole trick lies. If HR gets to know what are these aspirations of Gen Y and they're able to anchor it, you will see them, suddenly the so-called loyalty definition changes and you can align them.
Shri, thanks for going beyond that one line, because the young HR leaders that we have today are having lots of mixed workforce, and it is important to know not to brand this generation as disloyal. So thanks for that. Over to Sunil and back to backfire. Sunil, compensation or culture? Which is the bigger magnet or a powerful magnet, and why?
So I think culture is something which is the glue that holds everything together. And if I go back to the time when I talked about ITC, where the thing was almost nil, the turnover, the compensation of ITC was much lower than the market, yet people didn't leave, and they didn't leave because of the culture. And even today, the culture, I believe, is very strong. Most of my friends, best friends, are from ITC even today, even though I left it in 2000,
I think that's the secret weapon Sunil always has. He has the magic of connecting with people. Okay, thanks. Srini, back to you in the rapid fire round. Gen Y, today's generation, their outlook towards job, marriage, or living?
Oh, it's completely living in relationship. It's not marriage for them because they go back and see life as much more adventurous than just a 9-to-5 job. And they also have this great deal of clarity saying that there are multiple options to do in life, so why should I get stuck to it? Now it is the onus on the HR to convert this living in relationship into a marriage. If they are, like Sunil rightly said, if the organization culture is nice, if they are able to learn, if they are able to grow, and if they get freedom to pursue their dreams, then they quickly turn into marriage. But otherwise, when they walk into the organization, they walk in with a clear intent of living in relationship.
Awesome. Thanks, Srini, for the wonderful insight. And the last one for the rapid fire for Sunil. Sunil, meeting with no agenda can drive important agendas.
I completely agree, because we used to do that in Synchrony also. We used to have meetings with no agenda, and I think a lot of important decisions got taken there, policies. So I've always found that meeting with no agendas, we've been able to drive a lot of things, you know.
Awesome. And now the last one for Srini. Uh, Gen Y needs constant praise. Is that true?
Absolutely. There is there is no debate, no discussion. This is one thing I think we all agree, and it is also a simple reason being the nuclear family structure as we are. So today there is a husband and wife and one child, and that one child has no other attention. So, and parents also are both the husband wife, mostly of them working. So when they come back in the evening, they have the guilt of not spending time. So they try to shower more and give constant attention. All the international schools also, if you see, the teaching of pedagogy is very different than what we learned in Kendriya Vidyalaya. In Kendriya Vidyalaya, we were never called, if teacher called us, then we had to run away. But here today, if you come back, all these kids come back with a star every day in the evening. Saying, yeah, today I stood. So there's a joke that happens, we won awards when we won, and today they win awards for participating. So you participate and you get a star in the evening, and that star itself is a recognition. So when I come with that star and show to my mom who's already going through a working mother's guilt, she puts another stars to take away the guilt, and then the dad comes, and dad is competing with the mom as a parent, as well as he's going through his own guilt, so he gives another 2 stars, saying the mom has given 2 stars, 1 star, I'll give you 2 more. As a child, I'm sleeping with 4 stars every day in the night and saying I'm God's gift to mankind. And when I come to workplace, I expect the same from Meg and Sunil, who is HR, saying, where is the constant praise? Why are you not praising me? Because my mom and dad used to tell me I'm the best thing that could happen to planet. So yes, that's a challenge that we'll have to live with, and we'll have to figure out ways and means.
Well, Sunil doesn't believe in generation, so I know Sunil is smiling about the whole Gen Y phenomena. But I think I know the sponsor for the gift hamper that we had for the rapid fire is normally given by Atul, and Atul is already telling me, "Make don't declare the winner because it's actually 50-50." But thanks, I think.
Give it to Sunil.
But awesome, I think rapid fire puts you on a spot. Yes, Sunil, you were saying something.
Couple of closing things I want to say, Meg.
Yes, actually, I actually wanted to just say that, with this 50-50, now we want a final message for the audience coming in from you and Srini. So all yours.
So Sunil, just to butt in, sorry, I got a request that you need to give either a movie which inspires HR guy or some shairi from your side. It's a special request from someone.
Come on. So I'll say one shairi. सिलसिला टूटने नहीं पाता, सिलसिला टूटने नहीं पाता, आज की बात कल पे टलती है, सिलसिला टूटने नहीं पाता, आज की बात कल पे टलती है, ये शमाए उम्मीद भी अजब शय है, रोज बुझती है, रोज जलती है.
क्या बात है, वाह वाह. बहुत good.
There is one very important learning that I had as a trainee. When I was straight out of college, there was an informal mentor of mine who took a lot of interest in me and what I was learning every day. And I found that he used to be, there were 2 factories which were co-located, and he was the production manager of the other factory, and nothing to do with HR, but I learned a lot from him. And I found that he would know every employee by name, whereas most others would know them by ticket numbers. He knew them by name. And secondly, he would always stop whatever he was doing and address the employee issue when they walked in. So I asked him, how come, you're such a busy guy, how come you have time for everybody who comes in? And this is what he told me, and this has always remained with me, and I've tried to follow this throughout my career. He said, a person is busy who has time for everything. And he said, if you make employees a priority, you will take time for them.
Awesome.
So that was one of the thoughts that I wanted to leave this audience with. And secondly, another principle which I followed is, I start with 100% trust of my team. And I don't think most of the HR people here would have seen their bosses' appraisals. I can bet on that, But what I always followed was that whenever I did my annual appraisal, I used to call my entire team in and share my appraisal with them. Only reason was that, I said, whatever are my achievements are not mine alone. It's a summation of what everybody has done. So I want you to give me feedback in terms of what I can do better, and what should be dropped from this. I think that openness and transparency helps build trust and credibility. And without that, you're not a good HR person if you can't build your trust and credibility in an organization. So those were my thoughts. Thank you for this opportunity, Meg. And last, if anybody has any follow-up questions, my telephone number is on my LinkedIn profile. You can be with me on WhatsApp and ask me questions, or have WhatsApp calls with me. I'd be happy to answer any questions that people have as a follow-up.
Sunil, just a alert, do announce your time zone. You're not in India. We don't want to be pinging you in the middle of night. No, but I think that's Sunil, and I've known Sunil for now more than 6 years, and I would say I always found him appraisable. So Srini, any final comments from you? Closing remark?
No, so I would just take from where Sunil left, and I think as ER professionals, we need to understand that money is an overrated phenomena, and we should be not falling for that. Because when Devdutt Patnaik was asked to summarize Bhagavad Gita, he said 2 lines which are very critical, and that is very nice for all of us to remember. He said, "Pashu jeeta hai anna ke liye, manushya jeeta hai arth ke liye."
Wow.
And he said that is the Saransh of Gita, and that is the summary for us as ER professionals. People don't live only for money. They look for a meaning, they look for a purpose. And as ER professionals, if you are able to help them find that when they come to our organizations, you will find a very different way of looking at life. So I think we should see our life, or we should see our purpose of our life beyond transactions of money, and should be able to show that to our employees also.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Srini and Sunil. I just wish that, that's the power of Rubaru. You just feel like 60 minutes goes like zip, zap, zoom, and you don't realize that, the time is running. But thank you, Srini and Sunil, and to all of the participants for ensuring that, we had an engaging session. And thanks to Atul for making my life interesting with shooting and supplying so many questions on a real-time basis. So I think, credit goes to all the audiences. But thank you so much. And I hope, Atul, can you see everybody's videos turned on already?
Half of them. So people are doing it. So by that time they come, I'll just thank the audience, because there was good active participation, and whatever I was shooting to you was coming from audience. That is one. And a lot of questions I could not take because there was a limited time. So just bear with me if I have not been able to take questions. Thank you so much for being active participant.
So in spite of supplying me so many, you're still saying that you did.
There are many I could not take. I apologize for that. Maybe we'll try to put that in answer perspective in setting.
Perfect. But I think, Atul, like every Friday, without taking away any thrill from Sunil and Srini, we have to announce the next Friday webinar that's coming up. This one is, as we are in the middle of crisis, the new theme that we are bringing to all of you next Friday. Stay tuned, because the topic is inspire or heal. I repeat, inspire or heal, the role of communication in crisis. And we have a brilliant speaker, a thought leader, Ms. Shalini Nair, who's a senior director of HR and communications from Amadeus. So she will be doing this webinar for us. Again, a Rubaru chat. We request that, me and Atul both, Atul joins me in saying this, that, we need this kind of a participation to make the Rubaru successful. So thank you so much, everyone. Once again, let's turn on the videos, because we want to capture a beautiful memory. I sincerely appreciate all our international audiences also who woke up so early in the morning today. We sincerely appreciate. Stay tuned. Good day, good evening, and a good night. Have a good weekend. On behalf of Strategist and family and Enable, Atul and me signing off. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it. See you next Friday.
Yeah,
Bye-bye for now. Bye for now. Thank you.
Bye.